Okay, here we are in the Terragen. Let's open our terrain. And there we go. Let's get a quick shot of it. Render a quick preview. There it is. How pretty. How about here maybe? Nope. How about there? Looks pretty interesting, doesn't it? Let's get a full-size render of that. Okay. Looks like we need to adjust the lighting just a bit. But that's fascinating. I like that angle. We got some of our wear erosion lines in here. So let's see what we can come up with. Let's change our lighting just a hair and see what that does for us. Perfect. Couldn't ask for better lighting. Okay. Let's turn our detail down, add our first child, and call it grass. Change its color. Let's see if we can get it to cover pretty much everything for right now. Let's get it blocked off, see if we can get it where we want it. It's a little high on the mountain there. Let's change that slope. Looking better. Pictures I've seen, we got green going up all the way up on this secondary mount. So what we might be doing here really with the grass is giving it a limiting of its height. Let's go to view sculpt so we can get some terrain information here, probably in around the 400, 500. Let's go back to grass. Let's give it a maximum altitude of 500. There we go. Let's render preview. Let's shut off the slope on it. There we go. Let's get a bigger image. And here in our bigger image, fantastic. That's exactly what we're looking for. We've clamped it off. Now let's adjust some of that slope because we want some of these areas to not have grass. We want to break that up just a bit, but we're getting it in there. So let's change maximum slope, render preview. And it looks a little too much. Looking better. Okay, that's looking a little more realistic, a little more spaced out. We've got some breakup in our grass here, our green, and a little here. I'd like to see a little more in these lower lying areas. So let's maybe we can get that with tweaking on our sharpness mask. Let's pull that all the way up, see what we get. Let's bring that back. Brought that back too far. There we go, we're getting some right in here and dispersing. Getting happier with the roughness of that grass where we're going to find it. Don't particularly care for that as much as I did the other one, and I really should have saved it before I started playing around. That would have saved me a lot more time. So, word of warning to you. If you find something that you sort of like, you might want to save it, and then you can always go back real quick. Okay. Well, not too bad. I think we can tweak on that a little bit more with some subsettings, but let's get a little more grass back up on the hill there. And there we go. That's fantastic. Okay. Okay, to that grass, let's add some a child and call him dark grass. And let's get a color for him. And play around with its coverage. And there we go, we have some dark grass or some greener grass in there, and we want to break that up a little bit more, make it appear a little more random. Okay, there we go. We've softened that up. We can see some down in here. We've got some more of that green mixture. Let's change a little bit of its bumpiness. And get it to mimic the terrain a little bit more, and let's see what that looks like. Okay, we've broken that up a little bit more. Let's add a darker brown to it, that area maybe where we've got some brown patches. Now I want to add it not necessarily to the dark grass, but the grass itself, so that it'll intermix with the dark grass, and it doesn't necessarily have to be inside of the dark grass. So let's add a child, and we're going to call him brown. And I'm going to think it's clumpy and that it mimics the terrain a little more. And its color is going to be sort of a mud golden, I'm thinking. Brown. That's a good poop brown right there. Okay. Maybe a little bright. Let's see if we can mute that a little bit. There we go. That's a much better brown. And keep it up on the slope constraints. Let's render a preview to see what we get. I'd really like to see that more on the flats and less on the heights. Okay, we got maybe a little brown. See if I can get it into this area and some across the upper. I must have pulled it back a little too far. Another way we could have called that in is not necessarily through the sloping constraint. And turn its coverage up a little bit more. There we go. And now I'm going to pull in its sharpness, or pull its sharpness out. Slightly too much. But that's another way that we can blend things together here. better. Maybe a little more fractal noise. Yeah, I'm looking at it here. It really is sort of a little too predominant. So we'll just call that back just a little bit more. See, as you can see, a lot of this surface map texturing is playing with it, getting what you want it to look like. So that's a lot of sample rendering and a lot of preview rendering to get it sort of in the ballpark. That looks good to you. Now if I could add maybe some grassy, bumpy bits to it. Let's add a child to the brown grass. And I'm going to call it bumpy bits because that's what it is. I'm going to want it to mimic the terrain an awful lot. And let's give it a different color than this putty. Okay, so now that we've got sort of a base going here, we've got some intermixed browns and greens, trying to sort of springy on the plains lands here. Let's see what we can do with the some of the effects that we can import that we made in World Map or World Machine, and see what we can bring in. Okay, so here's one of our maps. This was the tallest map. And as you see, it's sort of interesting, a lot of little bits and pieces. And let's use that as our mask for some craggy rock bits that we might be able to try to add in here. Okay. And we're going to open up SOA image overlay. We're going to edit that. That's the correct size. We're going to make it transparent, black overlay. We're going to tile it 1:1. So let's select the bitmap, and this is it right here. Open, click OK, click OK. And what that should do now, okay, you can see and it's might be too small here. Let's see if we tile that. There we go. It was saved at 513. I'm going to turn our fractal noise down all the way and our coverage all the way and take off the map slope constraint. And I'm going to change the color here so that we can make it glaringly obvious to us where it is for right now. And let's take a look. See if that does anything. Wow. So it is everything that is the bald rock face. Okay. So let's make it very bumpy. Mimic the terrain. And let's change the colors. Back to more of a neutral than it is right now. And now here also we can make a slope constraint. And we can change its altitude. So we have those to still play with. Okay, and as you can see, it's drastically changed the coverage map here. So what I want to do is make it a slope constraint on that. And what I'm doing there is giving it a minimum and a maximum so that it appears in a certain area. More of a vertical bit. What I'm trying to do is clamp that off so that I get more of the green. Render a bigger one and see what it looks like. Okay, as you can see, that this is what that tallest map did for us here again. Still want to bring out some more of the green on more of the flats, but I do like what it did for clamping out some of the higher, steeper slopes. So I'm going to come back to its coverage area here and see if we can tweak on that. Maybe a little fractal. See what that does. Okay, let's try a minimum altitude and see if that helps out. Ooh, a little bit. Okay, let's go back into the plugin. There it is. Let's try additive. See what that does for us. And you can see what changing it to additive has done here. Sort of smoothed it out slightly, added in a little bit more detail. Actually sort of starting to like that a little bit more than I did with the other one. But let's try total overlay and see what that does. Okay, there we go. That's I think that was the total additive, and that's pretty interesting. Let's see what that other map does for us. Okay, this is our flow map, and it's got a bunch of flow lines. I don't think we're going to see a lot of them since our camera's coming from here. I don't think we're going to get a lot of these deeper ones, but let's see what we can do with it by bringing it in. Add a child. Image overlay. 513. Okay, well, right here we can't really see very much what that flow is doing because it's happening in other areas of the map that aren't as prevalent in the image that we're looking at here. So let's see what we can come up with, a little bit more tweaking on the rocky bit by adding a child or a sibling to the rock. And I'm going to call that rock color. And what I'm going to do with it is give it a minimum altitude of 500 feet and no maximum slope constraint. Let's try 400 and see what that does for us. Coverage, good amount of coverage. Bring that noise down. Oops. And I want to add in a little bit of complementary colors to it if I can. And what my target area really is up on the Devil's Tower itself. Well, that's really hard to tell from here with the colors we've got. So let's go back. And I'm going to make it a totally garish color so we can see if it appears anywhere on that preview. No, it does not. Minimum altitude. Okay, what we see here is it really, when we look at it, because of the mother or the parent to the child, which is the rock color that I was tweaking with, the parent was only allowing it to lay up here on these flat sections. That's why we weren't getting any coverage with it. For some reason here we're only getting the hilltop. Okay, that's why, because I've got it on subtractive. That's what transparent looks like as a mask, additive. There we go. So if I really wanted to get the hilltop, what I really need to do is go back to the transparent, minimum altitude, turn my coverage back up, and render a preview. A lot of that peak should be lime green now. Yep, there we go. Okay, let's go back to the rock color and change it from up its bumpiness, totally mimic the terrain, change its color. And some fractal noise to it, because we don't really want full coverage. We want render preview. Should have some flecks of color in that now. Not necessarily what I was going for, but worth a look. There's the larger render, and as you can see, the contrasting color is just too bright there. So let's go back to the color and tweak that, and mute it. And we got a bigger render here, and we actually do have some more detail up in there in the mountain. And again, okay, and as you can see here, what we have is just another render of the same image, done from a different height of 640 meters above the ground there. And we had to extend the sky just a bit in our sky map. Right here, from 4,000 to 6,000, and that allowed it so that we didn't have any. We had some clipping right in here and right here, but that gives you a fantastic image. Really shows off the erosional areas and the talus around the mountain there, that map and this erosional area that we did in World Machine. And let's change some of the haze effects just for fun. Drop our half height down. Quick render of what that might look like. Maybe we can introduce a little bit of fog. As you can see, we changed some of the atmospheric bluing here. Let's turn the density up. There we go, looks more interesting. Just playing with the bells and whistles here. Pretty much out of the package stuff. Let's play with the clouds a little bit. And let's see what that's done for us. Got some shadows cast, it looks like here, from the clouds. Let's check our render settings. Let's jack them up. Yep. Let's change that to, gosh, I wonder what it'll let me do. We'll let that render off. Okay, we rendered that off there, and what we got to do is just sort of give our heads up on that, on the tripod, the pitch. Let's make that 2 and re-render it. So as you can see, we got the render finished here, and we've added some cloud shadowing and some hazy atmospheric effects, and we made it look more like sort of we changed the edge bluing of the atmosphere, and that looks a little more interesting. And then there's also we changed the color of the shadow too on the bark side of the moon. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. It gives you the basic ideas of working through getting some of the things done. I hope it's helped you out, and hope to see you